Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main event. You are here with me, Daniel.
And Aaron.
Aaron, we're finally here.
It's insane.
It's a journey. It's been a journey. We are doing Group F, the Group of Death, potentially the last ever Group of Death because of the league format coming in next year. Very controversial league format. I think we've done well to hold off on all of the Newcastle stuff so far. I think we've earned this moment. We're both kitted out. We are both part of the sports washing regime, quite clearly right now. But this is amazing for us. And when Aaron and I started doing this podcast, one of the things that we sort of agreed upon that we thought people might like is that we don't support a Champions League team. So we couldn't be a Liverpool or Chelsea or Man United or Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal were in it then either. Tottenham, whoever was in it, Man City. We couldn't be one of these fans that had this rivalry and wanted to talk about our club all the time. We thought that would be a really good selling point. And here we are. So we're going to try not to gloat or to try and be too biased.
We just need to get out of our system.
But we do need to get out of our system. Get it! Get it! We're here. We don't know how long it'll last. We've not had the great start of the season. For anyone that's not been following us, it's been mixed. It's been very, very mixed emotions for the start of the season so far. We are going to talk about Newcastle versus Milan, first game, because we're just
you are actually going.
I am going, yes. So
we'll see if he gets into the stadium, though. But he is making the trip to
I am
Milan.
making the trip to Milan, and I do have a ticket, and the ticket does have my name on. And I will have my passport, but who knows what could go wrong between now and then. So, yeah, it's exciting. I've been to Italy a couple of times, but never Milan. Never really been that fussed about going to Milan from what I've heard from other people. But now that it's happening, I'm absolutely buzzing. I'm going with Ed, who does the other podcast that I'm on for the UCL Fantasy Pod, Fantasy Football Ed. People may know him as. So yeah, we're going to have a good time. And I know a bunch of people that are going as well anyway, so there'll be plenty of people there to have a few beers with regardless. Enjoy the city. You got a few days off work. Can't complain, especially with how busy this week has been with all of the research and podcast stuff anyway. So we'll have a good time.
If anyone else is going, like obviously with this being on GallowgateShots, there might be some people.
Yeah, I imagine
going.
so. Drop it in the comments if you want to meet up for a beer. More than happy to. And you can tell me how terrible I am at these podcasts. Speaking of which, obviously, big thanks to GallowgateShots. Please don't forget to follow them, give their video a like, all that sort of stuff. You can subscribe, remember, to them for $2.99 a month, and you get exclusive access to content and group chats. A particular group chat known as Smut. Aaron, do you want to know about that?
Tell me about it.
No, we've got to join $2.99 a month.
Oh,
I'm afraid. Can't be giving away the trade secrets. So one of the most interesting things, obviously, about this clash, we'll call it a clash, we'll build it up at all times, away to Milan, is that actually, Aaron, Milan are the team that got you into football. So for anyone, again, that hasn't been following us, Aaron, you tell us your journey to begin with for football.
Yeah, so just briefly, because you don't want to hear this. Basically, it wasn't until like 2008 where I got into football. The first match that I watched was the Champions League final between Man United and Chelsea, which I understand is not a great game.
No,
but
wasn't.
My dad was I don't know if he still is, but Man United fan. He kind of lost interest.
Just for context, Aaron's dad's Irish, right?
Yes.
So he can only support Liverpool or Man United.
Yeah.
There is one of the two.
Yeah. A little bit of Celtic in there as well, but
a different league.
Yeah. But basically seeing how excited he got with the penalty shootout and the names he called Cristiano Ronaldo after he missed, basically made me show an interest. I then did my research, but obviously around about that time was kind of just watching the best players in the world, which AC Milan had just recently won the Champions League, I guess the year before that.
2007 final.
And
another terrible final.
So it was Kaká who in his prime that made me fall in love with football, and then
You got sold to Real
the
Madrid
season later, Newcastle got relegated. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. AC Milan were the team that I kind of watched to get into football.
And it's helpful for this podcast because it means that Aaron watches a lot of Serie A football, which is why I tend to just fob all that off onto him. So that being said, let's get into the game, Aaron, because that is what people are here for, not our life stories. We have Newcastle away to Milan. Let's start with Milan. A good start of the season compared to last year, where they definitely had a bit of a slump after winning the Scudetto. Tell us about Milan's start.
So they've won every game so far. The most difficult game so far, they won 2-1 to Jose Mourinho's Roma away in Rome. They interestingly do have the Milan derby this week before the match, so I guess that's a good
indicator.
Yeah, it's
for both teams.
It's going to be a good thing for Newcastle that they have such a tough, emotionally taxing game before this match. Inter, I think, are the stronger of the two teams currently, even though they are both kind of battling for the top spot at the moment. And I think that that's going to be in kind of good favor of Newcastle. The fact that Inter, I think, could cause a little bit of damage and could inflict their first loss of the season. But in terms of AC Milan, a lot of last season, they didn't know what formation to play.
Lots of injuries, wasn't there?
Yeah, during the kind of winter period, there was a lot of injuries. And then after that, they didn't know how to fit in or what formation to even use. So there was a lot of pressure on the manager. They scraped into Champions League qualifying. I guess thanks to the point deduction from Juventus. Juventus kind of gave up after that, and Milan was able to secure fourth spot. But they did quite well in Europe, making it the semi-final again to Inter, who knocked them out. But I think that it's going to be a very interesting match, more because Milan like to slow things down, play in possession quite a lot, and kind of look for them fast breaks down the wings with their electric pace. And that's what my biggest worry is going to be, is how Newcastle's pace
in the fullback areas doesn't seem like
but
it's
I don't think
an area of concern for us. I don't know why you'd possibly think that.
I don't know how Milan will be able to match the intensity that Newcastle can create. So it's a very intriguing match.
In terms of their team, Maignan, goalkeeper,
very good goalkeeper.
Unbelievable goalkeeper. He is actually my shout for who I think Newcastle should sign next as a goalkeeper. I think that should be Newcastle's next signing. He's going to cost a lot of money.
I think he's France's
he's an outstanding goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And again, I think if you can pry Tonali away from Milan, I think you can pry Maignan. Again, wages a factor, but he's good with his feet, I think. From what I've seen, great penalty saver, good shot stopper. When he isn't in the team, Milan are a significantly worse team.
Mm-hmm.
Back four, who we got? We've got Calabria. Oh, they do play a four at the minute. Is that correct? Yeah. So we've got Calabria. We've got Hernandez. Simoncher still the captain / centre back.
He's the captain, but he doesn't start.
Tomori in there still.
Tomori. He recently got a red card against Roma, so he won't play against Inter, but he will play against Newcastle.
Kalulu, is he still playing?
They're kind of debating whether Kalulu or I always butcher his name, but it's kind of Theo. Theo. Like, he is the starting centre back, but it depends on his fitness. Kalulu may be the partner but he is a right back turned centre back.
Yeah,
which Newcastle have the opposite.
Yes. So obviously, I think the name on everyone's lips is Theo Hernandez. 6.5 million euros on the game. For me, and he's overpriced.
He's the most expensive defender in fantasy.
I don't know where that's come from because, well, obviously the prices came out before the groups were drawn, which is sort of understandable. But even if they had a relatively simple group, I still don't think he's 6.5 million. Obviously, he's great going forward. I don't think Milan are the most solid team against good opposition at the very least. Certainly not for this group. I also think he's a significantly better left wing back than he is a full back. I think defensively, he's all right. I don't think.
I do think he'll get
great.
the better of Almiron though, physically.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think that's probably fine. I think that's going to be an area where Newcastle will struggle. Whether it's Almiron or we play Gordon out there, they are very lightweight. And actually, Theo Hernandez can be clumsy with his body at times. So that's going to be interesting.
I think where he'll struggle, and Eddie Howe will kind of pick it up, is the double up. I think Inter will kind of exploit that as well. So Eddie Howe will kind of watch this match on the weekend, and where he's got a right winger, but where there's an attacking right wing back or a full back, which we know Kieran Trippier is very good at. So I think that's
come or go.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting because he sometimes, as you said, switches off, or if he's caught up, you won't know who to kind of chase. And then Tomori is very mistake prone.
Yeah.
And he's going to be the one who's kind of left. So I think they need to target the left side, especially in transition, which Newcastle are very good at.
Yes. That being said, on the ball is a different matter. He is a supreme individual on the ball. His delivery, his shooting capabilities, his willingness to get forward, and his athleticism. Do you think people should buy Theo Hernandez for $6.5 million on this game?
I think the 6.5 is a lot of money. But the issue is, I mean, he's currently selected by 27% of teams. So
that's a lot of teams. Again, that's a name, isn't it? Oh, he's one of the best left wing backs in the world. We'll have him.
Yeah, and I think with Theo Hernandez as well, like it is, people know him for his attacking threat.
Yeah.
But he has fans in France. He has fans
in Italy,
also Germany with his brother.
Yeah.
Who now plays in France. But but if you compare him to the other kind of defenders, you've got. He's 6.5, but then is anyone at 6 million better? Cancelo, potentially.
I think so.
Alphonso Davies.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. Hakimi.
Maybe.
Calabria 6 million is
no chance.
Overpriced.
Way overpriced. Good, very good defender. Way overpriced.
Molina. We spoke
I'd
about.
rather have him. Yeah.
Balde.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel for Arsenal. Overpriced.
I think he's overpriced, yeah.
QER?
Oh, yeah, overpriced. Arsenal.
Trippier?
Overpriced.
And they're the 6 millions. So Theo Hernandez, he's more expensive than any of them, but we've identified a few 6 millions who you could potentially have instead.
5.5, Di Lorenzo, Dumfries, DeMarco. Spoiler for those ones.
Yeah. But could he exploit with his double up with Leao on that wing? I think similar to last year's Champions League, he didn't actually get any attack and returns last Champions League.
I thought you got an assist.
Potentially just one assist.
I think you got one assist. But I'm sure they've conceded like 2 or 3 goals anyway. So
in that game, but he went through a stretch of getting clean sheets once Mignan came back.
True. And I think a lot of people point at that Milan team and go, oh, well, Graham Potter's Chelsea side beat them twice or whatever. They had 14 first-team injuries, including the captain, the goalkeeper. It wasn't like little injuries. It was like half of their team were absolutely butchered. So I think it's unfair to judge them on that. And I do think that they'll be a really, really good side in this group. Last question on Theo Hernandez. Who is more handsome, Theo Hernandez or Lucas Hernandez?
I have to say Theo.
Oh, that's why you're wrong. It's Lucas. It's Lucas.
I would say only because of AC Milan links, though.
Yeah, it's 100% Lucas.
Especially with Theo and his pink hair, though.
Lucas Hernandez at left back for the tune next to Botman and Cher.
Okay.
Ooh. Ooh. Moving into the midfield, Again, there's been lots of changes because obviously Tonali's not there anymore. He's went to someone else. Can't think of who right now. But they've really bolstered the midfield. Ruben Loftus-Cheek's in there, who loads of people know about. Pulisic's in there on the wings. Krunic seems to be a bit of a favourite. 5.5 million for Krunic. Is he worth it at that price? Do you think he's going to get any points? What does he do? How are Milan going to operate in the midfield?
I wouldn't say Krunic is the one to go for. I would say, and I'm going to butcher his name, Reinders?
Yeah.
Either way, someone can correct me.
Go on the game. It's the player that's name begins with R that you can't pronounce either.
5.5, and he's the one playing in the 10 in Benacer's absence.
Benacer's out for a while, isn't he?
Yeah, so 5.5 for the attacking midfielder of the three. Loftus-Cheek more expensive. Krunic, it'll just be for the kind of ball recovery points, but I don't think that he offers the same as what Tonali would have been able to offer. So Reinders, which is what we'll call him, is he's kind of the go-to.
Is he worth a punt at 5.5 million? Do you think he's capable of getting attacking returns? Despite, I know he plays in the 10, but is he actually good?
Like he's done well to kind of knit the team together so far. Something that he does really well is allow Pulisic and Leao to get into the box. So Pulisic he's scored quite a few goals so far. I think he's scored in a goal per game actually. So he's kind of recaptured that early Chelsea form that he had with Lampard. But a lot of it is because he allows for that gap, like for the wingers to make that run into the box. So that helps out a lot. He really knits a lot together in terms of like other kind of midfielders around that price. You're not going to be able to look for an attacking midfielder for as good of a team as Milan.
Strikers, we'll get on to an issue very shortly. It's the same issue we've had for the last 2 seasons, now the third. But we'll just start with Giroud, 8 million. Is he injured? Is he fit?
He's that's a very good question. I don't know if it was during the international break, but from what I'm aware, he's fit.
If he wasn't fit, who's playing up front? Any idea?
The likelihood would be Jovic.
Is that who they've signed from Madrid, ex-Frankfurt? Is that right? Frankfurt?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would probably play him up front.
Is he any good anymore? Didn't he go to Fiorentina or something last year? Or
yeah, he's not. I think he's excited to play against Inter, which is when you said about Giroud injury, that makes me like
think he is injured.
So it looks like Giroud will be out for the Newcastle match.
That's a blow because Giroud is a criminally underrated striker, but Jovic is obviously a talented lad.
Well, yeah, Giroud scored 4 goals so far in Serie A.
Yeah.
So that makes sense because he's kind of been posting the big one about how last time he played Inter, he scored the winning goal.
I remember that game very, very well.
But Leao plays on the other wing, 9.5 million forward.
And this is the issue. So Leao has been a winger forever. He's never been a striker. He's been a forward on the game for the last 3 years. Now, I suppose when you look at players like Marcus Rashford or you've got players like Vinicius Jr. being reclassified as forwards when the wingers, it's a little bit more acceptable. You can swallow it a little easier. But he's priced out the game in this group at 9.5 million, I think. If anything, maybe I actually think he's a really good pick for the Limitless against Borussia Dortmund. We'll get into Dortmund in a moment, obviously. But Dortmund seems like that would be a really good game for him. It's just it's the fact, again, we've already spoke about this, 6 unbelievable forwards to pick from, and that you don't feel like you can branch away from them. The amount of FOMO you're going to have, the variance that you're going to suffer if any of these players go off. It feels like too many players are locked out the game now. And because you've got players like Vinicius Jr., Leao, that are forwards, fielders here, Sané, Kvaratskhelia, Bruno Fernandes. It's like, are we desperate to drop a premium forward for one of these midfielders? I personally, I don't think that's the case. Whereas when you have Vinicius Jr. in there, if you had Leao in there, then you might go, well, you know what, actually, I'm going to go for one of the 7.5 million forwards in the game. There's hundreds of them. I'm going to go for that 7.5 million forward because I think that 7.5 million forward plus a Leao will get me loads of points. So I think the game has been forced into a little bit of a box at the minute, where it's a case of which 3 out of 6 premium forwards, I appreciate 5 with Vinicius Jr. being injured at the minute, and who's going to get lucky? Because between them, it's just luck at this stage. Like any of them could go off at all. Mm-hmm. So it seems like a little bit of a shame that there seems to be less tactics going into it. How do you feel about AC Milan at home versus away? How do you feel about them in general?
Before going into that, just a little update. 5 hours ago, Giroud is aiming for a return against Inter. So
okay,
it looks like he should be fit for Newcastle, which is a shame because we do not want that. Even though Giroud, we talked about the most handsome starting 11 before.
Giroud
is the captain.
I don't know about captain. He's prime candidate to be kicking around up front though for sure. I think there's some good looking forwards as well. By the way, from one of the previous podcasts, Marcus Llorente would be in that team as well. Handsome man.
Fair play. Kalulu will be injured though.
Kalulu's injured. Okay.
But in terms of Milan home compared to away from home, so far this season, I mean they've won every game, but in terms of they beat Milan away, beat Roma, away, and that's a tough place to go to. Roma, I think they conceded less than 10 goals at home all of last year, so they're a really, really good
home team.
I mean, they made it to the Europa League conference final.
Yeah.
And then Milan, they beat Bologna 2-0 away from home. So they've scored 2 goals away from home each game, but they beat Torino 4-1 at home. But again, it's kind of too small of a sample size to know. It'll be technically Inter's away from home, but it's not.
Yeah.
But they'll have the away dressing room. They'll have
less fans.
So
more flares.
Yeah. So it'll be I guess Newcastle going to San Siro will be tough, but I'm sure the ultras will put on an unbelievable display and make it really noisy in there.
Some lovely tifos. Be some lovely tifos. Rui Costa tifos. We'll move on to Newcastle. Also as well, Milan versus Newcastle is the early kickoff for Tuesday. So we've got one for Group G. I think it was Group G, and one for this group as well. So we will get to see Milan's lineup as we will get to see Newcastle's lineup, and I think that's going to be quite helpful seeing Newcastle's lineup because there are a few contentious spots up for grabs here. So Newcastle start the season brilliantly against Aston Villa, 5-1 win. We then had a disappointing but understandable, yet totally acceptable, yet infuriating 1-0 loss to Man City away. All of those emotions. We then had a very disappointing 2-1 defeat to Liverpool, who had 10 men. We 1-0 up. And then, an embarrassing 3-1 loss to Brighton. Just the manner of the defeat, I don't think
it's not a good trend.
Close. Yeah, it's been bad. That being said, it's fine. We'll move on. It'll be good. I'm sure we'll pick up during the season, but for the benefit of this, I think it's really important to take the bias out of it and recognize that we're a 4th pot team. We, I think, are like the 4th or 5th worst team in the competition according to UEFA coefficients. We've just had an injury to Sven Botman, who is critical to how we play football. I don't know when he's back. Aaron's going to see if we know when he's back yet. But from the last I looked, I don't know when he's going to be back yet. He hurt his ankle in the Liverpool game and was so disastrous that turned out to be for the Brighton game and even for the end of that Liverpool game. So he diminishes other people's value. Like, loads of people go for Trippier, I think, because of his bonus points in FPL, but there's no bonus points in this year. That's it. And I can't see Trippier getting man of the match unless we win 1-0 and he gets an assist or something like that. Botman and Shaw are both 4.5 million, but if Botman's not fit, I wouldn't go anywhere near either of them. I certainly wouldn't go near Dan Burn, even though he's the same price. I think Botman's probably the one for ball recoveries. Shaw's maybe a little bit more dangerous from set pieces, but I mean, he misses a lot of chances. If he's going to score one, it's going to be from 30 yards out in the top corner. I think we're going to have a little bit more joy, maybe, if you do want to pick Newcastle players, are going to be in midfield. So Bruno Guimaraes, 6.5 million. Ball recovery magnet. He is not getting you attacking returns, but he will get you so many ball recoveries in this game. 6.5 million. But then would you rather Bruno against Milan or Rodri against Red Star? Because Rodri's got a bit more of a goal scoring chance, but I think Bruno probably gets more ball recoveries because of the nature of the game.
I do think Bruno's more likely to pick up a yellow card as well.
100%. He's more likely to get a red card as well. I've also highlighted Bruno over Joelinton, but Bruno does get more ball recoveries. Bruno, I'd say, gets less yellow cards. I think they're probably about this. I know Joelinton got loads last year, but I think he's calmed down a little bit since playing in the middle. But Anthony Gordon at 5.5 million, if he's starting in the Champions League as a left/right winger, we don't know where he's going to play yet because Miguel Almiron had a little injury, but then it wasn't an injury. Then it was an injury, but now it's not an injury for Paraguay. So we need to see how that goes. But also, I think Newcastle fans are wanting Gordon to come in on that right-hand side for Mickey in general. But 5.5 million for an attacking player who is a bit hit or miss. I think performance-wise, he's been one of our better players this year. But in front of goal, let's flip a coin if he's going to score. He's very inconsistent in that way. So realistically, you're probably going to go Isak or Wilson. And I don't know which one's going to start. Genuinely don't. Isak is the starter. I would predict he would be the starter before the season. However, Wilson was one that got the goal against Brighton. He got a goal in the opening day. I know that Isak got 2 then, but it is about consistency. We have Brentford on Saturday night, isn't it? It's the late 17:45 kickoff, whatever it is. So because we've got Brentford in that game, and then it's a few days later, is he going to give Isak another hour? Because Isak tends to come off after an hour anyway. But whatever one starts is probably going to come off after an hour. So you've got a 7.5 million forward playing away to AC Milan. That's likely only going to get an hour. I'd just rather have Feyenoord striker against Celtic, like, for the price. However, I appreciate, seeing that we are in a collaboration with the Newcastle-based podcast, people are going to want to clamour for our players. If Minter comes into the game at Feyenoord, you can go for him. So you can get four Newcastle players. Go Hosselu up front for Real Madrid as a bit of a collector's item. I think you have to stay clear of the defence unless Botman's fit. And if he is fit, I think he's the one you go for. Kieran Trippier is a ball recovery magnet as well, but 6 million is insane. It's insanity. Beyond that, I think my 3, if Botman wasn't fit, would be Gordon, Bruno in one of the forwards. But I personally won't be going with any of them. If I was to go with a single one, it would be Gordon for 5.5 million on the off chance he puts one away. But I'd fancy him more against, if they're still playing the way that they're playing now, I'd fancy him more for that double up against Dortmund in 3 and 4. Away to Milan and home to PSG don't feel like the right games, especially with how beastly PSG's defense is looking on paper.
I think Gordon would do better on the right side against Theo than he will against Calabria.
Yes.
Knowing that Calabria is used to keeping
Kvaratskhelia
quiet. He did that over 2 legs. Yeah. So I think you want him on that side. Interestingly, I wouldn't know how Isak would do against Calabria. Just Isak is a very different type of player.
I think you play, for me personally, I think you play Joe Linton on the left to bully Calabria.
Yeah.
And I think you play Isak through the middle to get Tomori tied up in knots. And I think you put Gordon and Trippier double up on Theo Hernandez.
I think the disappointing thing is obviously Tonali's potentially ruled out. It's not confirmed yet, but injured in international duty. So does Joe Linton, he's probably not going to play left wing because he has to cover midfield now. Longstaff is potentially going to...
I think Longstaff will come in on the right side of midfield.
What about Harvey Barnes?
Harvey Barnes could do a job against Calabria because, again, he's physical. He's quite a... But I also do see a little bit of... I don't think he's as good, but I do see a bit of Kvaratskhelia in him as well. He's got those sort of gangly legs, likes to feint quite a lot, doesn't he? So Calabria's just a really good player, and I think they're going to be well drilled on knowing how we like to play. I think Eddie Howe's biggest strength in this would be to change things, to put out a different team that AC Milan won't expect. They know how we play. If we have to play the same team, that's sort of and that's the problem. All the teams do now. We have to start changing things just so people go, well, I've got no idea if Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon, Joe Linton, Elliot Anderson's going to play on that left wing. So how do I prepare my players for it? And Joe Linton is a massively different proposition to the other three on that left. And that's where he played last year when he got these 8 goals. It's where he played when we saw the best of him.
We just need Willock.
We need Willock back. But ultimately, I still think you could play Elliot Anderson there. It's probably too big of a game to play Miley. And I personally would have liked to have seen Miley play the previous games to see how he would have done so that he's ready for this. But you can't just put him away in the San Siro now with 16, 17. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, score for this game, Aaron. We've talked about this long enough.
2-1 Newcastle.
Right, because it's clearly going to be 0-0. Like, I'm going all this way. It's my first time in 20 years. It's going to be the most boring game alive.
I really want Newcastle. Obviously, I want Newcastle to win, but if I take that out, I think Milan, at best, we get a draw. That's what I think.
Yeah, and that's a shame because you'd back 11 versus 11. You'd back us. Like, obviously, that their left side of Hernandez and Leao's absolutely sensational.
Yeah,
and Giroud's great up front. But beyond that, like, I'd back our players. But
I think the best version of Newcastle beats the best version of Milan.
But we aren't the best version of us yet.
Yeah, but we have too many injuries.
I get that. The next game, Dortmund away to PSG. 2 wildly different teams at the moment. PSG did not start the season particularly well. We'll start with them. With 2 draws, thanks to a certain Mr. Kylian Mbappe essentially spitting his dummy out, wanting more money yet again. However, when Neymar's left, he's came out and said him and Messi went through hell there. Messi, when he left, was like, I hated Paris Saint-Germain. Not as a city. I think he found the city fine, but I just think the ownership and the lot of it he did not like. So maybe Mbappe just feels the same. Maybe we're all diverting our anger at Mbappe, but actually he's wanted to become the chairman because the football club is so horrible.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to when Cristiano Ronaldo came out against the ownership of Manchester United, and we were all like, how dare he say that kind of stuff? But as time has now told, like, everything he said is kind of true.
Yes.
So we're kind of outraged at the lack of professionalism, but what he said is true. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what Mbappe says once he's actually left. Because there must be some sort of contract thing where you like lose all your wages if you speak out against.
Fine 2 weeks' wages, 3 billion euros.
So I think Mbappe, obviously coming back, I don't think he's signed a new contract yet.
Nah,
I know there was talks that you'll sign a new contract and still be allowed to leave. I don't know why that would make sense. We're going to pay you more, but still allow you to leave.
Yeah,
Like
nonsense.
that makes no sense.
He'll be off. He'll be off to Real Madrid.
I think that was always the plan.
Yeah,
and he's in the right. He's like, yeah, I'm going to stay out my contract.
Yeah,
and they're like, how dare you do that?
Yeah, how dare you do what's best for yourself?
That you signed.
Yeah, exactly. With PSG, obviously, like I say, they drew the first 2 games, and then they've went on a bit of a rampage for the second 2 games of the season once he's been back in the side. We'll start at the back because this is where they seem to be most solid in terms of selection. Donnarumma seems to just be the keeper now. We're finished with Hokey Cokey. That's long gone. They've got the more handsome Hernandez brother. That's going to be interesting. Brothers playing against each other.
There's loads of stories like that in this group. You've got Botman and like obviously
with Milan, Tonali Milan.
Yeah, you've got obviously the Saudi versus Qatar ownership.
Yes.
Like there's loads of stories in this group. Donnarumma going back to Milan. Like
oh yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah, like there's loads.
Pulisic back to Dortmund.
Oh, it's tons.
So interesting. Yeah, I love a story. Ex-Inter Milan, Hakimi and Skriniar. So the defense is Lucas Hernandez at left back, Skriniar and Marquinhos as centre backs, and they've got Hakimi at right back. So we'll go through these for a start. Skriniar, Marquinhos, both 5.5, I think. I'd favour Skriniar over Marquinhos. Marquinhos was a legend when he was playing holding midfield and scoring every week. But for me, I think Skriniar is probably more likely to get ball recoveries and a player of the match from my experience of him in Milan. Would you agree or disagree?
I would agree with that. And I think something that's going to work out in Paris Saint-Germain's favour as well defensively is the fact that they play on the Friday night. And Dortmund play mid-afternoon Saturday away from home as well. So more favours in terms of the league and kind of helping out their team.
Yeah. Now we'll look at the other. So they're 5.5 million. Now as fullbacks, you've got Hernandez at 5, so you can save 0.5. Or they've got Hakimi at 6, so you can spend 0.5 for a man with questionable off-field behaviour. What would you be leaning to? It's Hakimi, isn't it? You scum. It's Hakimi. I see it in your eyes, Aaron.
I don't like Hakimi as a. He's never worked out when he's been in my fantasy team.
Has he not?
No, he's always been. I've always jinxed him. So
will we get him again then, please?
So I was actually going to avoid him. So everyone else get him in.
Yes, grading curse in full flow. I think at 6 million, he's the best value he's been in a long time. I think they have the best defense, as much as I do like Sergio Ramos. I think it's the most solid defense, especially with a centre back playing at left back in Hernandez. He is a better centre back than left back. I do think that means that Hakimi will be able to bomb on more because Hernandez has the option to get forward, but also to tuck. So Hakimi could be a really good shout. Hakimi's actually not only ex-Inter, which would be fun for the Milan game, he's also ex-Dortmund. He's never been a great defender. He's always been a better wing-back than full-back, 100%. So if anything, he is the weak link defensively. But I think with the experience of Hernandez, Marquinhos, and Skriniar, that's a hell of a back three if they took. That's an unbelievably good back three. I think they're going to be fine. Where they've got issues is midfield. So before we move on to midfield, if you had to gun to your head, which PSG defender would you go for? I assume that we're not going for Donnarumma at his price. Yeah, don't do it.
I feel like the goalkeepers are way too much.
Yeah, like why would you have Donnarumma over Hakimi? It doesn't make any sense unless it is for morals. Then just go for Hernandez or one of the centre backs.
Yeah,
for less.
I was actually going to go for Hernandez.
And are you going to go for Theo in your team?
I might now.
No, you're not anymore.
No, I wasn't going to. No,
cheating on Theo Hernandez. I'm going to tell him. When I'm at the game, I'm going to shout at him from the pitch, Theo, Aaron likes your brother more.
And he's going to respond as well and just be like,
With I don't
who's
speak English.
Aaron?
Who's Aaron? Don't speak English, mate.
But I think it's most of the money, because when looking at my team, I have unfortunately not left much money for defense.
Yeah.
It's just something I feel like I need to change.
I'd say the order for me would be Hernandez, then Skriniar, then Hakimi, then Marquinhos, personally. But Hakimi's got a chance to get an attack and returns. He just does.
At any match.
Yeah, in any game. In the midfield, now, they've got Ugar at 5.5 million. Zaire Emery, 5 million. So 2 plum cheap players here that are playing. Ugar is actually playing quite well. Zaire Emery, unbelievable talent, mixed form, expected because of his age. But they are both playing. I can't see either of them getting you much. I think Ugar is probably going to be a ball recovery player. He does play the more defensive role in there. The confusing thing is Marco Asensio. Aaron, did we get word on his injury? Because he apparently picked up an injury, but we're still trying to figure this one out. Marco Asensio, 8 million midfielder on the game, free signing from Real Madrid, is playing as a striker. He's an out of position, playing through the middle as a striker, and he's scoring goals.
A bruised foot.
A bruised foot. He'll be fine. I think we need to pay serious attention to Marco Asensio. He is playing ahead of Gonçalo Ramos, who was a big signing. I think that first game against Dortmund, when we're about to talk about Dortmund start, by the way, I think it comes too soon for Moani. He's not even on the game yet. If Asensio plays against Dortmund for 8 million as a forward, that is an opportunity that feels too good to miss, especially when it ends about which striker do we have, because Mbappe is in that conversation. Of course he is. But would you rather have Kane against Man United? Would you rather have, obviously, Haaland against Red Star Belgrade? Would you rather have Lewandowski? Would you rather have Victor Osimhen? Like, there are some ridiculous strikers to be choosing from here. And if you feel you can't quite get to Mbappe, because 11.5 million is the most expensive player on the game with Haaland, like, I really want him, but I'm struggling to justify dropping a player elsewhere to get up to Mbappe. That player could be Asensio, in my opinion. But again, it's not a long-term pick. But most people aren't having long-term picks. They're wildcarding or limitless wildcarding in 2. You've then got time to make a decision. I think you could limitless wildcard in 2, and then by the time you get a match day 3, just have him as a transfer out if he's not performing or anything like that. I also think, unfortunately for match day 2 against Newcastle, Asensio could be a limitless player at 8 million. He seems to be like the right sort of category. If he's still playing up front, he might not be. You might have Mawani. You might have Gonçalo Ramos come back in. You got any thoughts about that midfield? They do chop and change quite a lot in there. It's hard to pinpoint anyone else from the field to go for. I don't know. I think Dembele is a forward on the game this year.
He is, yeah. I think obviously Hakimi and Mbappe are so highly owned compared to the rest of the team. Dembele 4%, Marquinhos 4%, Donnarumma 4%, but then everyone else is like 2%. So Asensio is a massive differential. But in terms of the midfield, like, you're right in terms of the rotation, but I don't think Paris Saint-Germain's midfielders are ever where we've went to go to try and get the points. It's always been high offense forwards. So Mbappe is going to be massive, but the fact that Asensio is out of position, we tend to target them type of players anyways in fantasy games.
Yeah. Speaking of Mbappe, 4 goals in 2 games, I think, off the top of my head. He's the pen taker. He's ridiculous. 11.5 million, most expensive player in the game, Haaland. That is the only thing that is stopping him from being in my team right now is how the rest of my team looks with him in, unless I take out Haaland, which isn't happening. It's a case of I need to get up from Harry Kane or Victor Osimhen at the minute. That might change. Up to him, and that's a lot of money when I've already got a 4.5 million midfielder in there. I've already got a 4 million goalkeeper. Where am I getting this money from? When actually, is Mbappe the best captaincy choice on Tuesday? I still don't think he is. I still think Haaland is. And that's where I've got to look, which is why Asensio's really come to my thoughts, because he scored a lot of goals in the last couple of games. Ramos isn't a pick at the minute at 9 million because he's just not playing. And Mawani could be a pick, but then Mawani's going to have Asensio, Ramos, and I'm sure they've just signed another player up front for a ridiculous amount of money. They have like now 3 strikers that can't play because Asensio's playing so well. So that could be a bit of a wait and see, but with the short nature of the game, I could take a punt on Asensio. Oh, that sounds scary.
I think the biggest thing is 8 million, and then potentially what Man City assets you get in. If you get in Foden as well, they're the same price. Like that's going to be, I think, the biggest battles. And kind of what defensive midfielders or people like Gordon, who do you get in to kind of make up the rest of your team? I think you're going to struggle to get in players like Hakimi if you do have people like Asensio and stuff like that. So it's never just a straight shootout of should I have this player or this player. It's always because this player is more expensive. Is Asensio plus a 4.5 million defender better than Hakimi and
a 6 million
like Rodri or something like that? Like
yeah.
So it's always kind of, it's never just a straight shootout. It's what does your whole team look like as a result?
Dortmund. I don't have the results in front of me, but their results have been terrible. I think they won the first game of the season and then they've lost every other game.
So,
off the top of my head.
So they drew, they've won 1-0.
Yeah.
Then drew 1-1.
Yeah.
And then drew 2-2.
But who did they draw 2-2 with?
Heidenheim.
And who did they draw 1-1 with?
VfL Bochum.
They're losses. Yeah, these are a bit of a mess. We always say stay away from the defense unless it's Rafa Guerrero.
And he's moved.
And he's gone. He's at Bayern Munich. Or Thomas Munya. And he doesn't play anymore, I don't think. So, centre-backs Schlotterbeck and Schuler. Don't get them. I had Schlotterbeck as a double-up, an unbelievable double-up last year for Chelsea. And that's because Dortmund were playing okay. They are not playing well. We are back to don't have them. Ben Zabani was a bit of a legend a couple of seasons ago. I think it was for Mönchengladbach, perhaps. He was getting goals left, right, and centre, but I also think he was Mönchengladbach's penalty taker. So that would have helped as well with goals. 5.5 million. Go for one of the PSG defenders. If you were going to spend that much on a defender in this group, go for a PSG defender, please. So, as ever, we've got to move up the pitch for Dortmund players. Royce, 7.5 million. I think his time's passed, personally. We don't know when he's going to be fit, when he's not. He is a pen taker when he is on the pitch. He is one of my favourite players ever. I love Marco Reus, but his time's come, and I don't think at 7.5 million he's going to consistently get you points. Not when Jude Bellingham is 7.5 million, playing in the 10 for Real Madrid. Julian Brandt, however, 7.5 million is a much better pick. I think he scored in the last game. He's been one of their more lively players this season, and he was last year. First game of the season for the Champions League season last year against Copenhagen. I think he ended up getting player of the match. From my own eyes, I thought it was dreadful, but he got player of the match somehow. Or certainly compared to the other players that did score and get, I don't think he got an attack in return, but he got player of the match, came out with like 6 points. So he's capable of doing things like that, and generally is a very, very good footballer. Sabitza's in there, 5.5 million, but I think he's playing in a double pivot, which I don't understand. I don't understand how this ridiculously good player playing in the number 10 position for Leipzig is suddenly, thanks to one move to Bayern where they had to shoehorn him in, is now labelled a deep line playmaker when he's rubbish there. There's no wonder every team he goes to concedes loads of goals.
Yeah.
Does he have a defensive bone in his body? Forwards, Haller. Nice to see him playing football again. 8 million. Not the player he was at Ajax, unfortunately, but I think he scored this season, but he's been all right. Daniel Marlin, however, really, really improved. 7.5 million is a forward. Probably right that he is a forward. He's been very lively, scored goals for them this season. He really is an improved player. He's someone that's been all fart, no poo. Historically, super lively, absolutely zero end product. A Dutch Theo Walcott. But he seems to have added some of that to his game this year. They've also signed Fulkrug. It was a really good striker. Proper old-fashioned striker, finisher, can do a bit of everything. Quite nimble, but stocky. He has no price in the game yet. That could be really interesting. Aaron, Dortmund. What are you thinking about them?
None of them are in my team. But I do think they're the type of team where later in the group stage, they always make like a late push. So I think they could be interesting, especially if any of the other teams, like if AC Milan get loads of injuries again, or if Newcastle can't seem to turn it around, or we focus more on other competitions or anything like that. And Dortmund could be, especially at their place, it's a incredible atmosphere, which a lot of us will be able to kind of experience.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a few cracking atmospheres at these games, to be fair. I agree in terms of holding on. I also think some of them will be cheaper by the time we get to those fixtures. By the time you get to Newcastle at home, Milan away, Paris Saint-Germain at home, I think they would have a few price drops. Because I just don't think they've got very nice fixtures. I think PSG away, Milan at home, and Newcastle away is a bit shocking for them, to be honest.
And the next time they play Paris could already be through, and so they're playing like a rotated squad, and
yeah, exactly.
It's going to be at Dortmund. Like that's the type of match where you would be like, right, let's get a few of these in. Depending how the Europa League third place is kind of looking.
I think for the start though, they're a team that you kind of at the minute want to be targeting to attack. You want players that are playing them, which is why I feel like I really should have a PSG player. Tuesday night fixture against a really poor defense, and they're playing in Paris. I feel like it's a bit of a gift horse when you look at it. What's the score going to be, Aaron?
2-0, Paris Saint-Germain.
I don't want to agree with you. This is the issue.
Then don't.
Don't tell me how to live my life. 3-0 Paris Saint-Germain. And on that bombshell, that is another group preview done. Thank you so much. Aaron, was that one a little bit longer than the previous?
Yeah, when it's the group of death, though.
It is the group of death, and we did get a little overexcited because we are in this group. But I think that's fine. We've waited 20 years for it, and I think we've been quite mute on a lot of the other podcasts that we've done. So thank you so much for bearing with us, especially if you don't support either of these. There's 4 of them. Any of these 4 teams. Hopefully we'll still try to help you out as best we can with all of the teams. Aaron, just quickly before we go, actually, I want a group order. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
Paris Saint-Germain first.
Yeah. You're on a Newcastle podcast.
I was actually going to say Newcastle United second, AC Milan third, and then Dortmund last.
I'm going to go Paris Saint-Germain first, Milan second, Newcastle.
Oh, look at you throwing me in.
Yeah. Well, look, if you want to It was your choice. It was a free choice, Aaron. If you want to throw away all of your allegiances to Milan, that's up to you. Because you could have Milan first, Newcastle second if you wanted, but no.
No, I actually do think Newcastle have a really good chance of finishing second.
I do.
As long as we get some of our players back.
But I think all of the teams have a really good chance of finishing second. Is that
the meaning of the group of death?
That's what being in the group of death means.
Oh, what?
So I'm going to say Newcastle third into the Europa League. And then, I think Dortmund will finish last. Sorry, Dortmund fans. Please don't forget to like, unless you are a Dortmund fan. You're probably going to dislike this. Subscribe. And we will see you next time for another group preview. Bye now.